women's league. She just competes. And I feel like the thing women run into a lot of the times, I'm thinking of like someone like Danica Patrick in the States, is if you go and look at her stats, it's just really bad.
Right.
And it's like, what, women aren't good, blah, blah, blah. But the more I stop and think about it, it's like, okay, that was just one woman. You know, if there was more women in there, it would be like the stats would equal out, I think, and there would be more women winning races and whatnot, if just by virtue of there being more of them.
Yeah, that was my issue with the ladies' league was like, you know, say there were 10 women competing, 3 of them would be really, really good, and then the other 7 would just be like so subpar. And I'm like, how are and it's like, are they just featuring this many to fill out a roster? Because it was always like the same 3 people were just really, really talented. And then the other 7, like, were not bad drifters, but they certainly were not like national comp level drivers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're
I think
right.
it's just because they don't get to compete against the higher tier. Like, how can you expect to improve if you're not getting to compete against the very best?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, it is. It's probably a numbers game more than anything.
I was going to say, though, I would love to get an opportunity to ask one of those women that are in like the all-female drift league, or just, you know, that have the girls drifting teams, if they prefer it to be just them, you know what I mean?
Let's get them on the cast.
Because I could see it being like, yeah, they just want to, well, that would be nice. But I could see it being like, you know, we want to just hang out with like-minded people.
Right.
You know, maybe it's not as deep as we think it is.
No, you're right. You're right.
And I don't know how we got on that tangent.
Does Masayo speak English?
I think so. On her post, you always have like English, but that's probably just Google Translate.
Let's get her on.
I mean, I'd love to talk to her if we can find a plug.
I'm saying.
I mean, I'm thinking of one person, but we'd have to like forge a friendship with him to get us in the door.
I don't know what that means. That's cryptic. Okay.
we can talk about it off air.
Yeah, because I always see her and her son. And he's good, and he's like super young. Well, not anymore, but you know, he's been driving since he was like 12.
Yeah. Would you let your kids get into it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like if your kid was like 16, is like, hey, Dad, I want to buy a clapped out fucking Sylvia.
Even if he was younger, I'd be cool with it. You know, like the goal is to already have a drift car anyways. So if he was like 13 or 14, because he's going to be a fucking giant anyways. So if he's like 13 or 14 and he's like, hey, can I try this thing out? I'd be like, yeah. You know, obviously he'd have to learn how to drive a manual first, but
yeah.
I would.
I'd just be worried about the money aspect of it. Like if I had a kid and if they came to me and was like, hey, I want to get into this, and they weren't working, I was like, I'm not funding it. So you better figure it out. Like, I don't care what you do.
Right. If he wanted his own car, that would be different. But if he was like, hey, can I hop in the driver's seat and try to do some skids? You know, like how we learned, like empty parking lot, cones, figure eights, and donuts and shit like that. You know, I'd be all for it. Damn, dude. Yeah, this kid learned young. No, I think that's tight, man. I think it's cool when you get kids into stuff that you're interested in. And it's hard now because my kids are 5 and 3, you know what I mean? So it's like if they want to help, there's really nothing to help with. And so that's kind of the weird part is like they're so young that they don't really get it. And it's not, I don't know. I mean, they help with like little things, but they're really not helping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah, go turn that bolt for me. Like,
it's more nerve wracking than anything. It's like, please don't drop the hammer.
Well, that's true too, man. Because I trust myself with sketchy shit. But like, if the car ever fell on my kids, I would lose my fucking mind. I would be, So I shouldn't say that. I don't do sketchy shit. I do jack stands. But anyways.
Jack stands.
Speaking of sketchy shit, dude, take us into our next topic.
Oh, well, so I just wanted to get, I wanted to start kind of like a reoccurring thing of like all the sketchy shit you've done. And I know we've mentioned this on the show before, but it seems like my list of sketchy shit that I've done is too long for me to still be alive. I guess I'm just lucky. But like, okay, so I'm thinking of 2 things off the top of my head right now. So the first thing was I was doing my first engine installation back into my R32 GTR, and I had to get the car jacked up at like this really steep angle in the front for whatever reason. I forgot what the fuck I was doing. I think I was trying to get the transmission underneath the like the side of the car. So I jacked the car up, but it wasn't high enough. So I was like, okay, well, what can I do? So I grabbed some wood and put it on top of the jack and jacked it up more. And then I had the jack stands that can go up high enough. So I was trying to be, you know, a little bit safe, but I couldn't, you know, even with the jack stands maxed out, they wouldn't, you know, reach the bottom of the car. So I put 2 planks of wood on top of each jack stand. So it was the car sitting on top of the planks of wood on top of the jack stands. And I was like trying to get something lined up, and I'm like shaking the shit out of it. And I'm underneath the car, mind you. And I'm fucking shaking the shit out of this thing. I was trying to get like the transmission to like wiggle up into the fucking the flywheel.
Yeah.
And I got it in eventually. And then I get up and go around the car, and I look at the front, dude. It's like hanging on the front, like the front frame rail, like kind of where the radiator would be. It's hanging on to those little pieces of wood by like less than an inch. Like if I would have shook it one more time, that shit would have fell on my head and like crushed me.
Damn, dude.
And then I'm really lucky to be alive on that one. And then there was another time where, actually it was recently, when I was changing the head gasket on my Skyline, and I had the head off, like just hanging from a jack from the engine hoist, and I needed to move it onto like the workbench. And my wife was inside, but I don't like ask my wife to help me do stuff because it like immediately becomes to like 10 times more dangerous because she just can't function in those types of situations. Anyway, so I go to lift this thing up, and I didn't drain any of the fluids out or anything. So there was still like gas in the fuel rail. So I go to pick it up, and all that gas like falls all over me, like on my, you know, on my junk basically.
You're right.
Like I'm like soaked in it. And at first I didn't feel anything. I was like, okay, you know, and I just put it down, and then I'm like walking around, and then I feel like my fucking dick is on fire. I'm like, what the fuck is going on, dude? There's no pictures that exist, or maybe there are, but
I hope
you guys will
not.
never see them. But I'm just like running around the house in my underwear, like pouring water on myself, trying to get these chemicals off of me, dude. It was so bad. I'm like, oh God. And those are just minor things. And I know that there's people out there that have done like way, way worse stuff.
I remember, I remember when I was really trying to be stancy with my 240. Like I was broke, dude. So I had the S14 on some CX Racing coilovers at the lowest setting. And I took fucking collars out so I could get lower. And then I put 16-inch wheels on with like a 35 profile tire, like really trying to go like Shakotan with it. You know what I mean? Like little wheels, little tires, really, really low. And I had to do adapter hubs because I had Corvette wheels on it, which I think are 5x120. And so I had like a 25 mil spacer. And then on top of that, I put an 8 mil spacer on the fronts to try to get the fronts out a little more. Or maybe it was on the rears. I don't remember. But anyways, so by putting the 8 mil spacer over the 25 mil spacer, I only had like 4 full rotations on my lug nuts, and then they were bottomed out. So it was like they were barely threaded on, dude. And I remember I had aluminum lug nuts, and I was going down the road, and one of my wheels fell off. And it didn't fall off catastrophically where I was like scraping frame going down the road, but it fell off and then just like bottomed out in my wheel well. You know what I mean? So it kind of just stopped me right then and there. And I was like, oh, thank God. But also this sucks. And looking back at it, dude, because I just did the same thing on the SEMA. I didn't do spacer on spacer, but I tried running an 8 mil slip-on spacer, and there was like no thread engagement. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, it was instantly, instantly bad news bears. And I was like, I'm done. This is not the move. But
the older I get, I'm sorry, I keep trying to.
Oh, you're good, dude.
Well, I was just going to say the older I get, the more aware I become of that, because I'm a very impatient person. So if I'm working on something, I just want to get it done.
Right.
And then I end up doing something stupid. So.
Right. And I used to do stupid stuff intentionally. And that's where I'm like, why the fuck did I do that? So whenever people are like, oh, what are you doing on the 240? I like my standard answer now is I'm unfucking everything that I did in my 20s. Like I got proper coilovers. Like I said, I did all the suspension arms. I did all the brakes. Like everything on that car that I had fucked up, I fixed. You know, I went back to a full interior. I gutted my fucking aftermarket stereo and subwoofer and all that shit. Like I went back completely stock. And so even like the you know the plastic stoppers that press against your brake light switch?
Yeah.
Those always break, right? So mine broke several years ago. Both my brake switch and my clutch, what do they call it? A neutral safety switch? Or is that for automatic? Either way. both of those little plastic grommets snapped. And so what I did was I taped like a dime to my brake pedal just to have something there to press it. But then recently I spent like the $15 to buy the right, plastic grommets. And I was like, why the fuck didn't I do this like 10 years ago? This was way easier. And they just press in. Yeah, dude, it's like, it is. I think the older you get, the more you're like, let me just do this the right way. Because I think you discover after enough times of like doing it the wrong way and then fixing your own fuck ups, it's like, oh, if I just did this the right way, I wouldn't have to do it twice. It's like, I would just do it once and be done with it.
Dude, you honestly just jogged my memory about something I did on the GTR. Like, I went and put on a Nismo master cylinder or slave cylinder, but it had like a bigger bore, so it was supposed to make it easier to push a stiffer clutch. But the throw of the arm on the end was a little bit shorter, which I didn't know, because you were supposed to use it with a specific clutch,
right?
And I didn't know that. So I throw it on the car and I'm trying to like bleed it and get the system working again, and it's just not disengaging the clutch properly. And my dumb ass, I was like, okay, well, the problem is I need to make the arm that moves the springs on the clutch, the face of the clutch.
Right.
I need to move that a little bit further. So what should I do? I'll stick like a little nut or something like in between the slave cylinder and the little arm, so it'll be like extending, the length of the arm basically. So, which is obviously stupid, but I got a little aluminum little spacer thing from one of my RC cars and like stuck it on the end, because it was like concaved in the center, so it kind of fit around the end of the arm perfectly, and stuck it in there. And I did all this stuff, and I'm laying there on the floor looking at it, and I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. And like, I just undid it and just put the OEM one back on. I can't tell you how many times I've like bought stuff and not thought about it or done stuff like that. And then I do all this work to put on this new shiny part that I bought, and I was like, this doesn't work like at all. I just wasted all that money.
I'm glad you looked at it and were like, what the fuck am I doing? Rather than just sending
drive.
Dude, damn. Yeah. I don't think I have anything that bad. No, I really don't. I think driving the 240 like I did was probably the dumbest thing I did, because it was so low and it didn't even look good. Like in hindsight, like I thought it was the shit, but it was such a clapped out piece of shit. And like now it looks presentable, but I think 10 years ago me would have been like, oh, this looks whack, because I've got like stock wheels and like proper ride height, and it's actually drivable and enjoyable now, but I probably would have been like, oh, it's not slammed. This is pretty stupid. But this brings us to a good topic too, is we're talking about doing things the right way, which obviously, and we didn't even talk about this, but it costs more. And I think that's a big part of it, is like when we were kids or early 20s, late teens, it's like you don't have the money to be buying OEM parts all the time or paying for shipping. It's like, I need to get to work tomorrow. What's a quick fix I can do with what I have?
Yeah.
And I did that a lot. And I think so when I say on fucking shit for my 20s, it wasn't like I was being negligent. It was just I was like literally poor. And I could barely afford it. And it was my like only car. You know what I mean? I didn't have a reliable daily driver. It was my daily driver. And so that brings us to like, do you feel like you can actually afford to be into cars? And by this, I mean afford responsibly, where you have money for savings, you have money for going out with your wife, you have money for all of your necessities. You know what I mean? Like actually what a financial advisor would say is responsibly affordable. Do you think that your car hobby is responsibly affordable?
That's going to be a resounding no from me.
I'm in the same boat. I'm very much in the same boat. I spend a lot of money on my cars, but that's almost all I spend my money on.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I have like a mental switch where like, if it's something that I have to spend money on for my car, I can like go to the website, put this up in the checkout box, click checkout, and there goes like $600-700.
Right.
But anything else, I'm talking underwear, socks, freaking going to the store to buy toothpaste, I'll sit there and I'm like, man, I don't know if I should buy this expensive ass toothpaste. Like,
I did that yesterday.
Just get the cheap toothpaste.
Right.
Dude, you don't even want to know what my underwear looks like. Looks like goddamn freaking weight reduced underwear. I got like Swiss cheese running. Hey, but the wheels on the GTR though, them shit's shining.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, dude. And I was actually watching a video where a financial advisor